I reloaded my rifle and slung it over my shoulder onto my back. Most orcs had issues with guns due to their big fingers, but after enough practice, I had no problems. My finesse had even impressed some elves I'd worked with in the past. That was the last kill I'd planned that day, but I had to be ready to defend myself just in case something wanted to be sneaky. I marched over to the body of my most recent prey. The hide would sell for a good few gold coins, but what I was most interested in was nestled in the worm's ribcage, just in front of its heart. I pulled out my favorite knife. Its mithril edge shimmered in the setting sunlight as it shone through the tall grass. The glint of metal paled in comparison to what I was about to salvage from the serpentine beast's chest. The body lay twisted, broader than a wagon at its throat, a trickle of blood running over its dull scales. The shimmering chunk of rainbow quartz protruded from the chest like a mountain of crystallized light. I carved away the flesh around it and pulled the large stone from the halo of bone that held it in place. The stone was a sight to behold. You would never see stones this big in the dwarven mines. Probably why they seemed jealous of worm hunters like me. I chuckled. It was probably offensive, but the mere thought of a dwarf's temperamental outburst over stones like this always made me laugh. I heaved the rock onto one shoulder. I'd come back for the worm's hide later. Animals wouldn't scavenge from a worm, so I had time to return for the rest. I didn't like to waste, and the hide and other parts would fetch a good price. A few more rainbow quartz crystals stuck out between the scales like spines or horns. The jewelers in the city would love those. Delicate ones ringed the eyes on the sides of its head. Night came on fast in the plains. I adjusted my rifle strap and shifted the weight of the quartz to balance it better. My boots thumped audibly on the ground as I brushed through the grass. The cry of another worm far away snatched my attention to the horizon. The sound seemed anguished, probably another hunter claiming their kill. Then came another shriek, louder than the first. My brow tightened as I listened. Whoever that hunter was, they had to improve their marksmanship so they could get clean kill shots. There was no reason for these beasts to suffer. A roar shook the sky, even louder, and much deeper than the death cries of the worm. That's no worm. In my home country, worms were the apex predator. Their eyes were set in the front of their heads to lock onto their prey. I'd been hunting in this country for months, and never bothered to notice that these worms' eyes were different. Instead of pointing forward, they were on the sides of their heads, the identifying trait of prey. Another roar sounded, and a shadow rose into the air against the last crimson glow of the sunset. A massive set of jet-black wings spread, silhouetted against the sky. Even from this great distance, I could see the emerald glint of two forward-facing eyes, peering directly at me. The predator of the worms, a full-fledged monstrous dragon. Such beasts were rare, or so I'd heard. No hunter, no warrior, not even any wizard in that country would dare face one. Their size, mountainous, their hide tougher than any armor, and their fire was inextinguishable. Some said that to see both eyes together was a mark of death. The beast roared and started flying in my direction. It saw me. I dropped the quartz to the ground, my legs tensed, ready to run. No, I told myself. I am an orc. Orcs don't run. I reached over my shoulder, pulled up my gun, put the dragon's brow in my scope. Orcs die fighting! The dragon roared again. A crimson light glowed in its throat as it readied its flames. Nice fire. Here's mine. I pulled the trigger and fired a shot into the beast's mouth. The flames exploded inside the dragon's body. It cried out in shock and pain as it lost control and fell to the ground. I jumped to the side to avoid the beast's tail as it slammed into the ground. Before I could get back to my feet, the monster's chest exploded in a fiery blast. Chunks of half-charred flesh landed with sickening thuds around me. When the dust settled and the fire died down, I rose to my feet to take in the visceral scene. Scales black as night were edged in silver. The hulking figure was so large I'd be able to fashion a small house from its ribcage alone. I staggered around the tattered wing to get a better look at its head. The flesh at the back of its neck had torn, and the head lay at an extreme angle. With damage like that, there was little to no chance the neck wasn't broken. I continued around the fallen beast to the other side. The blast had blown open the skin, flesh, and bones. The lungs lay exposed underneath, one ruptured and scorched. Below them, 2 sacks, the source of fuel for a dragon's fire, were charred and tattered. My bullet must have pierced them. That would have caused the explosion. Fierce pride bubbled up inside of me, and I raised my rifle above my head. I laughed and cheered into the sky, screaming my praises to Gra Thul as I danced beside the mighty beast. I had killed a dragon, and I'd done it with 1 shot. "Bollocks!" the dwarf at the table cried over his freshly refilled pint. "Nobody's ever managed to kill a ruddy dragon. The orcs are all full of shady battle stories, always mongering how powerful you are." I must agree. The human who sat next to him took another swig of his own drink. I'd be willing to believe most orc war stories, but this? Killing a dragon is impossible. No one's ever done it. Especially not with one of those newfangled gun things. I smirked as I rose to my feet. "Come with me, I've something to show you." I waved to everyone who'd listened in from the other tables. "All of you, come along now." Everyone's mouths dropped at the sight of the dragon's head as it lay beside my house just outside the town. It towered over my tanning and butchering shed, scales gleaming in the light of the lanterns. With some help from borrowed oxen, I had the thing dragged here as proof of my stories. The gathered crowd stared in total shock, several people firing questions at me. I answered them the best I could, explaining my theory about its death, concerning the gas sacks and fire. Of course, I'd sold the quartz from the worm, but the dragon's hide sold for a lot more. A few alchemists came by requesting specific organs, and I gladly offered what survived the explosion. The meat was sampled by the local butchers, who snatched it all up for a high price and sold it on to rich folks' cooks. Several of the craftsmen I'd sold to came back later to bestow generous gifts from the materials. One offered armor made from the dragon's scales, another sent me a steak made from its meat, and a local orc carved me a totem necklace from its teeth. I visited the dwarf who sold me the rifle and its ammo. Business was booming, and his dwarven pride soared high ever since his gun killed the beast. He was still drinking free at the tavern because of it. "I'd like to make a deal with you," I said, sliding him a gold coin across the counter. The dwarf's eyes widened. "Really? What'll it be?" I opened my bag and laid a bundle of dragon meat and hide on the counter. "I want you to design new bullets that can pierce this without fail." His eyes brightened and his smile grew. "I can do that. I'll never have to pay for an ale again." Crouching behind the rocky outcropping, I listened to the approaching beat of wings. When it grew closer, I shifted into the open, aimed, and pulled the trigger. The rifle blast echoed off the stones as the dwarven-made bullet shot toward its mark. With a thunderous roar, the beast crashed into the side of the mountain. My 3rd kill that week. One more, and I'd head home.